Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. All right, hi, this is Attican, and welcome to part 2 of our replay of the Gold Rush using version 1.8 beta functionality. And in part 1, we got off to a great start. We got all of our tasks done in time, and you can see those gold checks means that we completed the task in half time. And if you happen to complete one and don't quite get there in half time, you do it okay for the overall scenario, but it wasn't fast enough to get a top score, then you'll see a green check, meaning you completed it, you're cool, but you're not going to get a perfect score. So far, we're still in the perfect score ballpark. So we started to set up what's going to end up being a 4-city cluster. San Francisco, Sacramento, Shasta, and Carson City. But right now, our focus for this episode is going to be growing Carson City and producing alcohol, because that is tough. The deal with the alcohol, what makes it difficult is it isn't available until some city has hit 65,000. Now, we have no competitors, so it's just us. So we've got to grow a city to 65,000, can you say Carson City, before we can even start alcohol production. And then we've got to produce 100 units of it pretty quickly. So obviously, the faster we can get everything going, the better off we're going to be. Don't even ask me what happened here. I don't know. But what I'm doing here is now building the direct line between Carson City and Shasta. Remember, with a 4-city cluster, all 4 cities need direct lines to each other. So we've got San Francisco going out to each of the other 3. This one that we're working on right here will give us Shasta to Carson City, and then we'll still need a couple more to get Sacramento hooked up with everybody. So again, that ends up, you have 4 cities, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You end up with 6 lines connecting 4 cities directly. And again, the reason is so that they can, whatever goods they produce can be shipped to each of the other cities. And then we try to manage the industries in the cluster so that everything is complementary. One city's making beer, one's making meat, one's making lumber, one's making furniture, one's making paper, and on and on. You get the idea. Dairy, whatever. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but the more perfectly you do that, the better off you are. So again, this is going to be our line direct from Carson City to Shasta, and it is going to be a really good money maker for us, besides the fact that it helps complete the model of the cluster, but it's just going to be a great money maker for us. Now, you saw me there. I turned down that Rensselaer because I'm not quite ready for it. There will be a time that the package deliverers will help us more right now, but soon, very soon, we'll want the Rensselaer. We'll want an express train. All right, so let's see, where are we? We're building out that line. We're going to build up our 4-city cluster. Oh, what else can I tell you? I think I can tell you nothing right now. I'm just going to shut up and watch for a minute. And another little review, all of our city-to-city lines are automatic lines. That's because we want to pick up any goods that could be shipped and then top off with passengers and mail. We don't use special cars because we don't know on any given run what the makeup of the car will be, and it's just too inefficient to use up a refrigerator car and a box car and a mail car and a dining car, that's half your train gone. So it's much better to just run them wide open. And nothing wrong with shipping 8 of anything. That's always good. So now we're looking ahead. Now we've got Carson City growing right this minute. There isn't anything immediate that needs to be done to help it grow. So we're going to look ahead to one of our tasks, which is to carry 2,000 passengers from Salt Lake City to San Francisco without stopping. So we have to build a nonstop line, and that's quite a line. It's a long, long way from Salt Lake City to San Francisco, and we've got that big old set of mountains there if we want to take a direct route. And I mentioned this in part 1. When the more direct your line, the better your passenger traffic will be. That's if you want to. I've played with this a lot. I've played this mission or this scenario a bunch of times, and I've experimented with different lines. And if you make a line that is too indirect, it may be pretty, it may be cost effective, for whatever reason. You make a big looping line that's not terribly direct between the two cities, between Salt Lake City and San Francisco, you just can't get anybody to ride on it. But this line, I don't think we'll have that problem, because what we're doing here, I remember, if you didn't watch the first one, you really should go back and watch it, and I'll put a link for it here. But on that first video, we built that little line to nowhere, which was coming out of Carson City. It was coming out of the same platform that the Carson City-San Francisco line runs on, and that was intentional because we're going to take advantage of that now, run this line through that, and use Carson City as a pass-through. We're actually going to run our passenger line from Salt Lake City to San Francisco through the Carson City station, but not stop there, so that we get credit for a non-stop trip. We're also going to cut out a little section right here and put in a maintenance station, brand new with version 1.8. We're going to give these trains access to a maintenance station, because it's a big long line. But really the biggest reason I'm using one, besides the fact that I just wanted to use one and show it, is that it's going to make a good bypass or passing lane. So here we've got 4 lanes. We can bring one track in here, and trains can pass each other or queue up on here waiting, so that we can use it as our little passing lane. And because right now money's tight and it's going to be hard for us to build out, I don't want to spend the money to build out the entire double track all this just yet, but I do want to get it started. And you'll see the other thing we're doing here is we're, believe it or not, going to run these trains full. That's a tip from Tridem. He's experimented with this. We're going to run full trains, which is just weird as all get out for me for a passenger line. But we're going to, now Tridem actually recommends running full passenger only. You give them a dining car and that's it, and then you can just run full passengers, and you get a couple hundred every trip, and you can move real quick like that. Well, I'm not trying to go that fast. But I do want to get it done in time to get full credit for it. So here we're going to go grab that Rensselaer I mentioned, and that's going to be our express train. We're going to use that for these lines. That'll actually increase the number of passengers we get. The better express trains with better passenger ratings help you get more passengers. We're going to have conductors on there to get more money or whatever. We're going to try to, and here's another thing, we're going to avoid, this is just weird, but we're going to, and this is also from Tridem, and it's a great point. We're going to avoid the engineers and stokers that give you speed bonuses and just take the ones that give us maintenance bonuses. And the reason for that is, and this the line is not so much true as it will be from one you'll see in a minute, but if we have a speed bonus on one particular train, it's going to be much faster than the other trains on our line. And had they gotten to an express status, they would lose that status because this other train is going to overtake them and keep that status. And you're going to end up with one train express rather than potentially having multiple trains having an express status, and you're actually going to lose income. So we're going to avoid that by just using the maintenance guys to keep everything moving. And that way we shouldn't lose our express status. Now again, this particular line, we're not worried about express, we're just worried about moving people and getting our head count up. All right, so what have we done? We've got our direct line from Shasta to Carson City, and we've started our express line service direct nonstop from Salt Lake City to San Francisco. And by the way, if you haven't played this or if you're new, be careful how you read that. It's from Salt Lake City to San Francisco. The ones, anybody coming back, they don't count. They're not helping us. I notice here that a textile industry has popped up in Carson City. And that's cool. That was the right thing to do. That's actually the only next thing you can build. Our cities are too big to allow us to build any of the other industries. But we want to make Carson City grow. So high priority right now is to make sure that we're running cotton into Carson City. And we'll set up that line now. And the good news is these city-to-city lines, since they're really freight lines, we can piggyback on those without interfering with the flow of traffic, provided we don't, put too much stuff on there. But we can go in. What we're going to do is set up a lane that comes in so that the cotton has its own lane into the station, but then it'll merge into and run along with the city-to-city line that goes over to Shasta. And that way we don't have to lay quite so much track, but we still get the advantage of having really dedicated platforms and dedicated kind of run-ups to the city by having this little extended run-up going out through here to merge into the line coming from Shasta. So here we can merge into the existing trunk line, the existing Shasta line, run on it for a bit, and then go off on the little entryway that we built, little private entryway. And that way any trains going into deliver cotton are not interfering with the Shasta line or vice versa. And we kind of we get to have that nice little super highway of track down near the city, which I enjoy. I really like my little super highways of track, but we don't have to lay quite so much track because we don't have to run it all the way out. So there you got that nice. See, we're like, what are we, 6 wide there? I like that. I like that very much actually, but. We don't have to lay quite so much track since we don't run it double wide all the way back. We use trunk lines where they make sense. You could also see there that I did the one-click maximum or minimum of 8. You just hit the minus rather than the plus, and it goes from 0 and loops backwards. It runs in a kind of in a circle. If you're on 0 and go backwards, the next number you hit is 8. So you can. It's a very one-click deal to set a max like that. Now we're looking at replacing all of our freight trains. We want everybody but the express trains. Anybody who's been set up as express. So basically that worked fine there. We took the Dragon now. Now we're running Dragons. We've been running to Philadelphia up until now, but now our money's getting pretty good. And now we're going to move everybody up to the Dragon, which is a much better freight train than the Philadelphia because of the tractive power. A little more speed, but especially the tractive power. And you know, on this map, and particularly the fact that, you know, I went over the mountain and all that good stuff, we've got some inclines to negotiate, and a good tractive power is a must. So our whole economy really is just going to take a little leap forward by changing those trains out. But I don't want to do that too fast unless I really can't afford it. But it just comes out of that. If you can't afford it, you can't afford it. It's kind of that simple. And I usually don't run mixes, although you certainly could. I mean, you could run high tractive power over a mountain pass and lower, cheaper trains on flat land, but that's too much work for me. My little brain won't handle that. So I generally run the same freight train and the same express train, and then do mass updates when the time comes. Also, by doing that mass update on the freight, we can get away with not having maintenance on our trains because we've in effect maintained every train in one fell swoop, because now we've got new trains, so they don't need maintenance. So we should be in good shape for a while. I want to add in a little more kind of passing lane, so I'm just going to build a simple little passing lane here with a right hand and right hand and left hand lane, and put in an extra supply tower just as a extra place the trains can just move a little further forward, and do it again back here around a supply tower. Well, put a supply tower back there because this is a long line, and we don't want to hope or rely on just that the tower that's in that maintenance station. And I actually read somebody's comment, and I apologize, I've forgotten your name, forgive me, but who had looked at this a bit and said that the trains will come to that maintenance station. Notice they're stopping. They get maintenance, but they don't get supplies, which is weird. They should get supplies. So now again, we've got to be diligent. We've got to stay on top of Carson City. It's not quite growing. It just needs something else. And we can see it's now grown to a size where there's a new set of things that it needs. It's going to start needing the milk and the sugar and the milk and the fruit and veggies and things like that it hasn't used before now. we can see our passing lanes are working, our trains are moving. We saw one back there waiting. Well, some of them are moving, some of them are waiting. We saw one back there waiting at that little bypass we built. And so just going to add another one in here. And really, I probably could have just stayed with this and never bothered it again, but you know, I like double track. So anyway, now if we look at our little potential 4-city cluster, it's not quite there yet because it's missing one line. We have every line except Sacramento directly to Carson City. And I looked at that one and I thought about going around in a loop, but it's just the way it's the order in which I did everything, it got a little clumsy to do it that way. So here I'm trying to figure out how can I get access to these lanes. I want to move the direct line to San Francisco out of the way and free up a lane so that I can then have my direct line from Sacramento to Carson City. And I'm looking at it and thinking I'm going to come out that way, but then I realize, oh, wait a minute, I've got that first platform, track 1, is my through lane for the Salt Lake City to San Francisco run. In other words, it just goes right through the same platform that the Carson City to San Francisco run does. And if I do what I'm doing here, I'm going to have to build some kind of weird intersection or junction to make all that work together. So finally, I punch in and think, well, why don't I just go to a nice little simple generic open up all 4 lanes kind of a deal. So basically, run your lines out of the middle, and then do the quick merges from the outsides, and then put an X switch in front of them, and now you've opened up all 4 lanes for accessibility in either direction, and that will allow all the lanes to work, plus allow the Salt Lake City lane to run. But I did have a struggle here. I couldn't get these two to work out right. And I think this has happened to me a few times when you get into deleting the track. Sometimes I think the elevations get off or something goes haywire, but it just won't quite work. So I really end up going back here and deleting again part of the track after multiple tries. See how it's got that red on there? It just will not work. So finally I decide I'm going to have to do a little more cleanup. And there, if I make it long enough, finally, the red goes away and we can make a switch out there. Now we have accessibility to all 4 tracks coming off that double track from San Francisco, and our little single line coming from Salt Lake City can still get through. In fact, that's what I'm doing here, is checking to make sure I haven't messed it up, and lo and behold, sure enough, they still work and everybody's happy. And my trains for the corn and the Bodie line coming into Carson City are both still running. So all is well. Haven't messed anything up. Now I'm looking at the utilization here. Now that track 1 shows a very high utilization, but that's really kind of spotty because the trains from Salt Lake City are coming through there just intermittently. They're not a steady flow, certainly. So now we're going to do our line from Sacramento to Carson City. And if you build this line in the big loop, like the cheaper, easier way to do this would be to run a longer line up there, merge it in with the Shasta to Carson City line, and come in that way. Now the problem with that is you can haul freight that way, be slow, but you can do it. However, you won't get any passengers because the passengers will look at that long circuitous route you're taking and say, hey, I got a direct shot over land. I'll just take the stagecoach or a mule or whatever they're going to take, and they will take off without you, and you won't get passengers on your line. And I like to have that extra income. Plus, the line, of course, is much more efficient if it's a more direct line. And at this point, we're making pretty decent money. And I've already proven to myself I can build a line without tunnels or bridges, so I don't feel like I have anything to prove to myself. So I'm going to finally cave in here and just say, hey, you know what? Tunnels are not that bad. If you got the bucks to do it, there's nothing wrong with a nice tunnel. And we're in good shape. We've got good company value that's going to give us nice big bonds. We can open up a couple of bonds here and have plenty of money to work with. So we've got about $1.8 million, so it's no problem to build that really expensive line. Do not do that at the beginning of the game. You will be broke and lose. But now we've got some income, so we're good. And coming back, the good news is once you built the tunnel, you get a really great second track, parallel tracks bonus. We lose $745,000 taken off the price tag, so coming back was not so bad. And still, it's about $1 million line. And why bother with it? Possibly could have done without it, but again, I want to be able to grow all these cities. I'm doing a 4-city cluster, and whatever gets produced in Sacramento right now, it's kind of a dud. It's just making redundant meat right now, but that'll change. And now we can run our straight line into Carson City. Make sure we use a freight train that can haul over those mountains or through the tunnel, I guess. And make sure we're coming out of track 4, which is the one that hadn't been used up until now. And now we've got ourselves a nice line that can haul goods from, well, Sacramento can get goods. Well, you get the drill. They can exchange goods and carry passengers and mail. So now we're starting to make some money. Our economy's in pretty good shape. And we got new toys to play with, so let's start playing with them. we need to have an express line between San Francisco and LA on a nonstop line. And by the way, this is there's a lot of ways to play this scenario where this is the first thing you do is build this line because it's a good moneymaker. If you were playing with the lady, this would be a great way to start. Just build this line right off the bat. 2 small stations, San Francisco and LA, hook them up, run express trains, put your conductors on it, make money. But we're running a freight guy, so it's a little different. But just the same, this is going to be a moneymaker for us, and it's something we need to do to hit one of our tasks. And we're going to use that large station with the automated signaling because we can, because now we have the money that we can afford that kind of a thing. And plus, I wanted to set this up so that we had kind of a 4-city cluster here, old school, the San Francisco, Sacramento, Shasta, Carson City. That's going to be an old school 4-city cluster, the way we would have done it prior to the last 2 or 3 updates. And hint, hint, the next thing we're going to do, we need 8 cities to grow to 80,000. We're going to have another 4-city cluster, but it's going to be what I would call the kind of the new school or a modern 4-city cluster.
I found something on the web for 8 cities to go to 8,000, another cluster.
Now this is funny. After all that messing around with that line, I still have it backwards. I don't have it going into the right socket. So anyway, I run down here, merge it in, and that allows the new lane I just put in on the right-hand side to be the right-hand side as it comes into the station, and then we'll just delete a portion of the other side. But here we see we've got that grows message for Carson City. That just means it went through the 60,000 mark. But remember, because we've got that mining stuff there to produce the gold, we don't get the opportunity to put a museum in there and help its growth. That's another thing that makes this so hard. Wells Fargo Bank means San Francisco can't have a museum. The gold in Shasta means it can't have a museum. Carson City, which is our first target to grow, can't have a museum. So that makes it extra difficult. So our 3 of our 4 cities in our cluster will not have the benefit of a museum to help them with their city growth. And yes, I'm well aware that there's been a bonus on that wheat forever, and I just keep ignoring it, and I think I just keep right on ignoring it. So here's how you finish off that line. You merge it in, and then you cut off the original line at the end and run it in the way you meant for it to be. That's when you goof up and you've got an outer going to an inner kind of thing, which is what I was doing. All right, so now we're going to need a diamond crossing because we've got a kind of standard 2-platform intersection there. Now, I did that thinking I might have some use for this line down the road, but the truth is I didn't. Remember, it's going to be an express line. We want it to go fast. We're not going to put freight traffic on there and slow it down and cost us money. So once we get this going, once we get that line from LA to San Francisco going, and it'll be a good place for us to wrap up this episode. So we finished off our framework for the 4-city cluster by running that line from Shasta to Carson City and running the line from Sacramento to Carson City, and we had the line from Sacramento to Shasta. So we've got we've got all the lines we need for a full-blown 4-city cluster. We also noticed the textile industry spring up in Carson City, so we made sure it's getting cotton. And we also did two important things here. First one was we got that Salt Lake City line running through Carson City to San Francisco, so we can do those direct passenger carries over to San Francisco nonstop from Salt Lake City to San Francisco. We got that set up and in motion, running full trains. Weird as that may sound, but it's working. And here we're in the process of finishing off our line from San Francisco to LA. We'll run express trains, passenger and mail only on this line, and that way we would hope to quickly get an express rating, which is what we're after to hit one of our targets. So let's wrap it up right there. Made a lot of progress and didn't get to tick anything off our to-do list yet, but we made a lot of progress, and we'll pick this back up in part 3. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.